I don't know if you remember, but I talked a bit before about the genetic variation found in harakeke, which is New Zealand native flax, Phorium tenax, and how our Māori tupuna, they knew that there were about 50 varieties of harakeke, and there's strong evidence to say that they actually deliberately picked those types of harakeke for the uses that they wanted, and probably even bred them themselves. And this is something that scientists do throughout the world. We call it selective breeding, where we choose the individuals with the features that we want, and we breed them together. So I can easily imagine how early Māori, when they came to New Zealand and they found flax here, they found harakeke here, they would have noticed that some harakeke was naturally kind of floppy, okay? And they would have found that some harakeke was naturally really stiff and upright. And maybe some harakeke was kind of in between, but it was a slightly different colour. Or when you dried it, the leaves rolled up differently. Or that when it dried, it went really clear or white, so it was easy to change its colour. And all of those are genetic variations. So I can imagine that early Māori, when they were building their gardens, they might have said, well, this is all well and good, but actually we want it to be even stronger. I wonder if we can do that. And they would have planted these ones together, and they would have let them bred together, and over time this variety would get stronger. So there would have been natural genetic variation, and then the kaipūtaiao, and the kaihangaro, the inventors, the innovators, the scientists amongst Māori ancestors, Māori gardeners, they would have started manipulating that over time. And that's a really common human activity. And so the question is, well, why do this? Okay, so there's natural genetic variation, and that's always a good thing, to have a lot of genetic variation. But there's also human invented variation, which is selective breeding. We're going to look at natural genetic variation. So why is that a good thing? And I'm sure you can see that there will be natural genetic variation caused by, so natural variation because different alleles exist, okay? So we talked before about the harakeke. Maybe it makes lots and lots of muka in all of its cells. Maybe it doesn't make very much muka in its cells, okay? So natural variation because there are different alleles of genes. So genes have different alleles, okay? And this is caused by mutations. And you might be wondering, well, why is that a good thing? And the answer is, well, that's a good thing because these harakeke will be suited to different environmental in situations. So these ones might be really, really good at growing in the swamp, because these ones, you don't want to have your leaves hanging down in wet ground. That's probably not very good for photosynthesis. So these ones probably really good for wet ground. These ones probably really, really good in exposed windy areas, because these ones will get buffeted by the wind a lot because they're so upright. So this allows harakeke to spread. And I don't want you to think that this is a deliberate decision on the part of the harakeke. It's not like they've got a brain. This is, as far as we know, a random thing caused by mutations. So a mutation occurs, it changes the protein being made, or it changes where it's made, or it changes how much is made, and then it makes the harakeke able to spread to new environments. But the really, really key thing about genetic variation is if there is a change in the environment, and I'm sure you can think of some examples of change in the environment. So if there is a flood, or if there is a drought, or if there is a new disease, or if anything, new diseases are a really good example. So if there is a change in the environment, some individuals, and I'm using their individuals to mean some little harakeke plants, some individuals will be better able to adapt. okay, because they have different alleles. So if there was a patch of ground where a lot of harakeke grew and it was quite dry, and so naturally it grew this kind of floppies type of harakeke, but there were a few standy-uppy harakekes, but they weren't as common because the environment favoured the floppy over harakekes. What would happen if it got damp suddenly? Okay, because there was a flood or because a river changed its course. And the answer is that over time, the population would drop, but it would bounce back. And these standy-uppy ones would now become more common, and these floppy over ones would be less common. So this happens also with diseases. Some people, if a disease breaks out, some people are better able to adapt to it. We will have a gene that makes us more likely to survive. There's something about our immune system. The same is true of plants. They will have an adaptation that makes them more likely to survive. So if there's a change, some individuals will be better able to adapt to it, and therefore will be able to survive better in the new environment and continue on their genes. So a really big thing in conservation with endangered species is things like, well, because there's so few of them, there's not a lot of natural variation left, and that makes their populations really vulnerable to a change in the environment. And in the bigger scheme of things, that's why if you have a monoculture, so you're only growing one thing, like a field full of just grass, I think you can see that means there's not a lot of variation there. Okay, if you're only growing one type of grass, if there's a change in the environment, the grass will be really vulnerable to dying. If you have lots and lots of different plants, the area as a whole will be more resilient, better able to bounce back. So let's sum up. Genetic variation occurs naturally because mutations cause different alleles. In our harakeke example, it can be standing up, straight, stiff leaves or floppy over leaves. If then there's a change in the environment, some individuals will be better able to adapt to it and therefore will survive better.